The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah, everybody. Good morning. It is Thursday, September 28th, and today is National North Carolina Day. It's also National Drink Beer Day, National Strawberry Cream Pie Day, and National Good Neighbor Day. Well, thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. Use that fancy little QR code right there in the top-hand corner of your screen to see where we live on the internet. We are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Rumble, and Twitter. Oh, yeah, we finally got some technical issues worked out. Oh, man, Gretchen is on the hill. She is live and direct. We are going to go to Gretchen first for this breaking news story. It is Gretchen Gailey. She's the founder of Panoptic Strategies and hitting the streets today. And it doesn't appear to be walking her dogs in atrocious outfits because she's holding her phone in her hand. That's right. It is none other than the Gretchen Gailey.
Okay, whatever. I don't know. All right, so I'm a little busy, so I'm trying to get shit done for you people, like getting safe banking passed.
Yeah.
Committee approves bipartisan marijuana banking bill, sending it to the floor. Senate Banking Committee has approved a bipartisan marijuana banking bill with amendments, sending it to the floor. Yesterday, members voted to pass the Schafer, bullshit name, Banking Act, sponsored by Senators Jeff Merkley and Steve Daines. Blah, blah, blah. This was a 14-9 vote. Now, if friends like good old Jason Beck's pal Matt Gaetz don't shut us down, this thing could go for an actual vote on the floor. But if they do, I'm not that fucking worried. They'll figure this shit out. And I would say we have 6 more weeks to get it through on the Senate floor. But even then, if it does not happen, people, it does not die. Please understand this, and all the idiots who keep telling you it's going to die. This is not the beginning of a new Congress at the new year. It will still be alive. There is still hope. But the hope is, according to the Banking Committee Chairman, Sherrod Brown, we're going to get a vote soon. So I would expect one. In theory, all right, pretend we shut down. That's 2 weeks that they're going to be off anyway. Get this shit back up and running by the end of October. I'd expect a vote in November. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
Oh, so you think we'll have a safe banking vote in the Senate by Thanksgiving, Gretchen?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm not mad at that. I do think the government's probably going to get shut down, and I'm not mad if the government gets shut down. That's less we have to spend.
It's a pain in the ass. Whatever.
Yeah, it is a pain in the ass. I agree, and it does affect a lot of people's jobs, and so we do want to be cautious and conscious and mindful of that. But at the same time, our government spends so much money on nothing that I'm not mad at a government shutdown.
What annoys me more is who didn't vote for the bill yesterday coming out of committee.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tim Scott was a no. There were more Republicans who were no. Raphael Warnock was a no.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who started to jump up and down about social equity for the first time in his life yesterday. A fucking no. Raphael Warnock, you want to care about social equity? Maybe you should fucking co-sponsor any fucking bill that's out there on cannabis and start to care instead of grandstanding.
Hold on. Raphael Warnock is a Democrat.
I'm aware. So
okay.
we should maybe vote yes on this shit.
Yeah. Exactly. Were there any other Democrats that voted no of this nine people that voted?
Trying to think. No, I don't remember. No, Warnock, I believe, is the only Democrat who voted no.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
The bulk for Republicans who voted no.
I'm surprised Tim Scott voted no on this. What did he give any reason why he voted no?
Well, he was not actually there. He only voted no by proxy because he was in California for the debate.
Oh, that makes more sense then. That makes more sense.
But they were not. People are not fans of Section 10 of the bill. And they are not fans of the compromise language that they came up with to keep Section 10 in the bill. And basically, Republicans are saying that if you are going to ban cannabis, we can't start debanking other legal industries, such as guns.
That's correct.
Which was something that was started under Obama before.
Yep, that's
a shit show.
That's the Operation Choke Point language. Correct, Gretchen? That's the Operation. That's the Operation Choke Point language.
Yes. So, and if they don't fuck it up too much, if they try and load it up with amendments on the floor, it's not going to pass.
Yeah, and
if they go with Graham Act, that stuff has been agreed to. Republicans will vote yes.
And I know from my time on the Hill, the Senate banking chairman, the senator from Idaho. Are you familiar with Crapo? Yes, Crapo. Crapo's big thing was
Sheriff Brown right now.
Okay, well, Crapo previously, his whole big thing was the whole hiccup around the Operation Choke Point. That was his big hookup.
Had some issues with insurance, but that's another story.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot to come, and don't listen to people who say this was a wonderful historic vote, great, sure, fantastic. It was, in theory, but it's just the next step, people.
Exactly.
And there are plenty of steps to this shit happening. And we need to stay on our lawmakers and get it done. Now, one thing I would call on all of our viewers to do, and I can send you his phone number to put it in the chat.
Oh, 100%.
I would love for people to give Sherry Brown's office a call and say, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for listening to the fucking people and getting this done and bringing this bill out of committee.
You want him to use that same language?
That drums up more support for the future. We can't just shit on people. We also have to say thank you.
We do. That's true.
People need to do that.
Do you want them to use the word fuck in the language?
Either way, thank you, sir. Thank you for fucking getting it done. It's about time. For fuck's sake. Yes, that's the exact language I want them to use.
Amazing. Oh man. We're gonna have a drafted up letter that people can send to Sherrod Brown.
Not just a letter. Drop a phone call, and when you get the intern who says, "Oh, he's unavailable," say, "No problem. Please tell the senator thank you for me for voting for safe banking." That's all they gotta say.
Okay.
Hang up.
I'm not.
Nice
boom,
and easy.
Done. Easy peasy, right? Yes. I'm not mad at that. Let's blow up some offices' phone lines today because they don't have anything else to do.
Hell yeah, they're all packing up their bags to go out of business. So,
exactly.
Yeah, they got time.
What are your thoughts on this, Dale? Rachelle?
Well, for me, it's just frustrating to see how many people continue to vote against something that seems like a reasonable next step. And Warnock that's fucking irritating.
Yeah.
I mean, he is I don't know if he's evangelical, but he's a pastor. And I just get so many responses from, it's immoral. Oh, my mama told you it was bad shit, so I'm not going to vote for it. We got to get well beyond that kind of stuff and see if we can look at this reasonably. There's a problem. We're trying to move forward. Banking needs to be there. What's the problem? It's not tied to guns, although, that's the argument. And politics is the problem we have here, Gretchen, is that people don't have the balls to stand up and say, I stand for this, and so I'm going to vote for it. Wishy-washy.
Well, and frankly, Committee Chairman Brown yesterday, Sherrod Brown, did stand up to Warnock and said, I hear where you're coming from. Everyone wants social equity, but frankly, the Senate Banking Committee is not the place to do it. We are not tacking something on to a banking bill.
Yep.
If you want that kind of provision, why don't you fucking introduce a piece of legislation to do it, Warnock, instead of trying to hijack a fucking banking bill?
Did someone say that to him?
We just get criticism all the time for loading up bills with shit that's not applicable to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what the chairman did yesterday, and that's what he did specifically when it came to amendments that they did not attach to it. It was like, this does not go with this bill, so we're not putting it on because we're not loading it up with crap that'll keep Republicans from voting for it.
Mm-hmm.
And Sherrod Brown did a good job yesterday holding this bill together.
Nice. Well, thank you, Senator Sherrod Brown, for keeping the game rolling. Because we got to keep moving this ball down the field and score a touchdown, even if it's with sleepy Joe Biden.
Got to do what we got to do.
That's right. We got to do what we got to do. It pains me to say it, but we do got to get a win. We do got to get safe banking passed. The industry desperately, desperately needs it. Yes.
It's a necessary first step.
That's right. That's right.
You can't just swallow a whole pie. You got to eat it bit by bit.
Mm-hmm. That is true. What? Any thoughts on this, Rachelle? Safe banking?
I mean, it's like everyone else has already said, it's small steps, baby steps. Yesterday at the Benzinga, former Senator Cory Booker was on stage, and they went back to the old Schoolhouse Rock, I'm
Mhm.
just a bill,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's still making its way, so it's just an incremental step. Yesterday was great, but it's just a small step forward.
Got it. Yep. That it is. It is one small step, but it is a necessary step that needs to be done. And I'm very interested in Raphael Warnock's in his reasoning for not supporting this. You're saying it was because of evangelical woes?
I'm saying it's because his provisions were not added on to the bill.
Oh, so he was trying to do.
Cory Booker and dying on a sword.
Yep.
To get social equity attached to banking. That's why he did not vote for it.
Mm-hmm. See, he Senator Cory Booker got in his ears and said, "Hey, I need you to do this for me because I can't do it." Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's like he woke up yesterday and found out that cannabis and social equity was an issue. He's like, "What? All right."
Maybe someone should tell him about Schedule 3 and what that'll do to social equity.
Maybe that'll be fun. Another good fan of us yesterday was Elizabeth Warren.
Really?
She stood up for getting this bill done. Yes.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Shout out to Senator Elizabeth Warren. Man,
James
that's
held his ground. I mean, there were a lot of people who did their best.
Mhm.
Haggerty, on the other hand, he was a pain in the ass, but he was entertaining.
Hey, at least he was entertaining. At least,
Yeah, that's all you can ask
You
for.
got some
Committee
laughs.
hearings,
You
they
can't.
get kind of boring.
Yeah, you can't win them all, right, Gretchen?
Hey, I'm gonna try to.
Yeah. Well, but my point is, I don't think anyone expected a unanimous vote. Is my point.
No, not at all. No one expected it, and frankly, no one expected it not to pass.
Mm-hmm.
Except for some journalists out there in the world who kept saying it was dead.
Well, I mean, there's been some people in our chat that's been saying that it's dead too, but we're not paying any attention to that.
Well, I love those people who aren't in the fucking room, who love to talk about things dying and don't know shit. Keep talking.
Oh man, thank you so much for Gretchen for your on the scene reporting today from Capitol Hill. We super appreciate you.
All right, I gotta go rattle some chains right now.
You go rattle some chains, and we are gonna deliver the rest of the news today.
All right, see y'all later.
You have an amazing day. Tell everyone up there I said hi, and make sure you spell it correctly.
Oh, I will be on.
Amazing.
Thank you, members on the committee.
What's that?
What to do? Remind people, call your lawmaker.
Yes,
Even if they're not your fucking lawmaker, call them. Say thank you.
I'm with that. I have no problem reminding people to do that. That is definitely something that people can easily do.
And while you're on the phone, call JD Vance's office and say, "What the fuck, JD Vance? He voted against it. He's a dipshit."
Send me the numbers, Gretchen, and I'll make sure that they get in the chat and get out to people.
All right, we're on it.
All right, you're the best.
See ya.
Oh yeah, Gretchen Gailey live from the Hill on Capitol Hill. She's not just a bill. She's a Gretchen Gailey. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Relying on 25 years of commercial hydroponic experience, King Solomon Nutrients has engineered the best liquid and dry fertilizer products for cannabis that preserves the crop, the soil, and the environment. Through relentless passion, research, and innovation, King Solomon has developed simplified cannabis crop nutrition you can trust. It was created for farmers, by farmers. Don't mess around. try the crown.
Oh, yeah, and we're back. We are back. Are you guys ready for this? Man, oh, man, oh, man. This is a pretty big headline, you guys. Michigan cannabis regulator recalls certain, and they basically are recalling certain Viola edibles for excessive THC. Can you guys believe this? Viola. Michigan's Cannabis Regulatory Agency on Wednesday recalled certain marijuana edibles produced by the cannabis company Shango and branded Viola Grandma's Kitchen. The recall, which is voluntary and affects a limited amount of marijuana-infused edible products, was issued because Shango was both unable to demonstrate that the product was homogeneous and because the product exceeds the maximum allowable THC limit, the concentration per serving, the CRA said. The recalled edibles come in varieties such as Big Apple Dreaming, Uptown Espresso, Paradise Island, and Auntie's Punch, and are produced by Shango, a vertically integrated cannabis company with operations in Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Michigan, among other states, according to its websites. Nearly 2,200 of the affected products were sold at dispensaries, including Information in Entropy in Ann Arbor, Shango's dispensary in Hazel Park, Emerald Fire Provisioning Center in Coleman near Mount Pleasant, and Plan B Wellness Center in Detroit. That's an interesting name. Generally, between late May to late July, nearly 6,800 of the affected products are on hold at Michigan dispensaries. David Harns, a spokesperson for the CRA, said, meaning that they aren't available for customers to purchase. Viola is a cannabis company founded by former NBA player Al Harrington, which has a medical marijuana dispensary in Detroit. Viola entered into an agreement with Shango to help fill the demand for Viola's edibles. The company said in an emailed statement and said it came as a surprise that its partner did not share the same commitment it has to adhere to compliance standards. In the statement, Viola said it cooperated with the investigation, supported the agency's suggestion to recall the edibles, and noted that no other Viola products have been subjected to the recall. An email was not immediately returned seeking comment from Shango, and homogeneity is important for cannabis edibles because it ensures that the THC is spread evenly throughout the product so they deliver a consistent experience. The products were sold at adult use marijuana dispensaries, and the maximum amount of THC per allowable dose in Michigan is 10 milligrams. Customers who have these products in their possession should return them to the marijuana sales location for proper disposal, the CRA said. And consumers who have experienced adverse reactions after using this product should report their symptoms and product use to their healthcare providers, the agency said. Consumers are also encouraged to report any adverse reactions to the products to the CRA by completing a, in quotes, adverse reaction reporting form that can be found on the agency's website or phone them at 517-284-8599, the CRA said. Well, Viola has a little whoop-de-doo with their gummies, apparently. What do you guys think about this?
I'm surprised this wasn't found before it went out to stores.
Yeah.
Part of the testing requirements are that you get, in California, certificate of analysis, which shows that you've got homogeneity and that each serving is 10 milligrams consistently within a couple of percent, I think it is out here,
Yes.
Jason.
Yep.
And that should never have been shipped. It was lucky it was a small batch before it got caught. Whoever produced that,
Shango.
be paying for the recall here.
Shango produced it.
Yeah, when you put together these licensing agreements and these somebody else manufactures your product, you white label it for them. You need to be responsible for making sure they comply with the regulation. This is going to be costly, and it kind of makes me chuckle that they want you to call your healthcare provider if you had an adverse reaction.
I
'cause
thought
you
that
took
too.
a gummy that had 12% THC in it rather than
And then
10.
10. Exactly. I thought a similar thing. But you know what I also was thinking? It was like, why would anybody want to return these to the store? If anything, they can probably get
Exactly.
more money for them since they're higher than the allotted amount. They could probably like put them on eBay and sell them for more money.
Well, just taking
The hot,
themselves and not know the difference.
Yeah,
That's the stupid thing about this.
exactly.
Between 10 and 12% is like what? You're gonna what, hallucinate because now your gummy has 12%
Yeah,
THC.
get the hell out of
To
here with
12
that.
milligrams. It's like this is
Yeah,
nuts.
you guys are beat batshit crazy.
seriously.
What are your
I also don't understand how it happened. Like, I don't understand how they got to market. I don't understand when the investigation came in. Like, I don't, the whole story is very confusing.
I agree with you. It doesn't allude to how this investigation happened, how they got tipped off that the products, you know, I mean, maybe they could have had some kind of agent in there just doing some random control buy for the agency, and they wanted to go and test the products, and that's how they possibly found out afterwards. I know I've seen that happen here in California with a few different products from time to time, but I do find it very interesting, and I find it a little bit interesting, Viola's response, in the sense of that they feel that their manufacturing partner doesn't have the same level of commitment to you know, compliance, so per se.
Yeah, what does that say about, Viola passing the buck? And then also,
Yeah.
how are you vetting your partners if you
Mm-hmm.
don't trust your partner? And Shango's a pretty big company,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting that they're throwing them under the bus. It really doesn't speak volumes to Viola. It's
Yeah.
kind of like you're both implicit in this. Like, vet your partners.
Yeah. And then
Well,
it was
and
like, oh, go ahead, Dale.
you need to have standards of practice for how you manufacture this stuff. That needs to go along with the licensing and white labeling agreement. Because if you're buying their gummy bears and having to put your name on it, and you're risking their manufacturing practices. But if you have your own and you produce homogeneous product that has 10 milligrams consistently, that procedure should be passed along and they should comply with it. And you should have records as you go along. How much of each thing did you put in at what time? And make sure you do R&D testing as it comes out for quality control. It seems like the quality control here should have caught this before it went out.
Maybe they were sick that day, Dale.
Yeah, or they had rectal myopia. That's
I
that may be what we're talking about.
I was a little confused. I was like, what happened? Like they forgot this batch of gummies. They didn't put it in the mixer for an hour and a half as opposed to like maybe 10 minutes or something today, or what, you know.
Well, we develop standard operating procedures, SOPs, and that goes from everything, the quality of what you bring in for your ingredients, how it's manufactured. Someone's got to be there watching this stuff, and the people who do it have to sign off, because if something really is in there that hurts somebody, they're going to want to go back up the chain of command and see who did what.
Mm-hmm.
How did this piece of metal get in there? Or how did rat shit get in there? Or whatever it is, it turns out. Where did this happen, so that they can prevent it and maybe fire some people? You can't be manufacturing products for human consumption and have your head up your ass. It's going to get you in trouble.
So you smell a firing job coming up, huh, Dale? Someone's going to get off with their head.
That's my specialty. Hand them their last check and tell them get the fuck out of here.
Kick rocks, huh? Oh boy.
I'm an asshole for hire. So
I really wonder if I wonder if in lieu of this, if Viola is going to drop their contract with Shango and look for another producer.
Well, I would hope something happens here. They need assurances from this manufacturer this is not going to happen again. And you should have in these agreements, you're going to indemnify the company for anything that costs them. And we'll see. I mean, this may have been a minor oops, and they pay for it and doesn't happen again. But the problem is you can manufacture something that can actually hurt somebody. Getting a little extra THC, you may not like the experience. It ain't going to hurt you as long as you're not trying to drive.
Well, I feel like the biggest thing with this non-homogeneous gummies, the biggest thing is all the money that they paid in packaging and production time that is basically lost because they're unable to sell it.
Well, in
Like,
the
it's not really
manufacturing
gonna hurt anybody.
process, You can have R&D machines yourself. And if you're going to be a large manufacturer, it's probably a decent investment. Or have R&D testing close by, so that as you get through parts of this process, it could really go south. You take a sample and send over. Make sure it's homogeneous and it has X number of milligrams per gram of product, so that you're within the range of acceptable before you send it downrange to be sold, and then have to bring it all back and pay all the expenses. It's a failure of the manufacturing process that actually got out, and that's who should be responsible. But you can't fix this. Don't go back to them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We're gonna keep this train rolling. We're gonna roll right on in to Mr. Dale Schafer. He's the founder of Armada Law Practice, and at one point in time did some time for a cannabis crime. That's right. It is none other than the Mr. Dale Schafer.
Well, good morning, everybody, or on the East Coast, good afternoon. My story this morning comes out of Law 360, and it's another lawsuit that got filed here in California, and the headline is "Pot Company Owes $275,000 after taking on loans," the suit says. And this is a complaint that just recently got filed, and the plaintiffs, and I'm going to torture their names. They appear to be Asian names. Mr. Huang and Mr. Pai loaned $300,000 to a cannabis company in 2 notes that were classified as lines of credit and promissory notes, and they were supposed to defer payment of the principal. They were supposed to get 10% of the net profits. They had the right to extend it. And then another company, Cannabis Global Incorporated, acquired 38+% of the company that held these notes. Okay? And there was a non-payment for a long time. The company that acquired the note holding company paid some money, paid $25,000 towards the $300,000 owed, and then they worked out a new agreement to extend the payments. If they made monthly payments and gave them their 10%, they would extend the date of the notes, and they just didn't pay. So they sent out the demands, the typical "pay me or I'm going to sue you," and they got ghosted. So they sued him. So this, just to back up a little bit, this is a complaint. It's allegations only. Nothing's been proven yet. The allegations are that they've been stiff for these loans, and the company that acquired them is a Nevada company, publicly traded. So you've got SEC issues that pop up. And the complaint is for breach of contract, which is pretty straightforward. We had an agreement, you breached it. And there's also a fraud allegation, and I'm not sure that one's going to hold water. Because if you think you can pay a note and you sign the note and it turns out you can't, that doesn't make fraud. You have to know going into it and tell people, "I'm going to pay you," knowing you're not, and then to rely on it, and then don't pay them. So I don't know that one's going to hold up. We'll see. And the other one is the breach of the covenant, the applied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. There are certain relationships that create a fiduciary obligation to the other side. A mere contract is not necessarily one. So the litigator in me is looking at this going, well, I challenge the fraud. I challenge the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. And there's also some question about whether or not this acquiring company actually signed an agreement to do it. They claim there's a confirming email. Well, in my world, I want people's signature on shit. So I do mergers and acquisition work. And this just reminded me that if you're going to acquire a company, you need due diligence. You need to find out what all their debts are and make sure that you're going to assume them, and that I like to have an assignment and an assumption agreement from the company. We're assigning the debts to you and you're assuming them. So there I have a piece of paper. I walk in and say, they put in writing, they're going to assume these debts. Okay. If you don't have that, you're looking at some litigation here. And another thing that I didn't see here is any claim that there was attorney's fees provisions in these contracts. And I want to warn everybody, if you want to have a stick to be able to win in litigation, put a prevailing party attorney's fees provision in these. Because if somebody sues you and it turns out that they lose, then they're going to be paying you. They don't just run in and start suing for nonsense. It's got to be something they think they can prove. And if you can't, don't be doing it, because it's going to cost you a lot of money. So a couple lessons here. First of all, mere allegations, we'll see how this works out. But the other one is due diligence. If you're buying or selling a company in the cannabis industry, be extra careful. Know exactly what you're buying and what you're selling. Put it all in writing so that everybody has got in there, all their cards are on the table. You know what you're getting or what you're selling and how much. And so when people stiff you, you really can go to court and force them to pay you. That's my story for the day. So let me throw it back at you. What do you all think?
Man, Dale, I mean, they're just basically saying, hey, you owed us this money. They may have some side manifest, they may not, and whatnot, or some other invoices for finances owed. And they're just, I mean, this just sounds like a normal case of people trying to collect their money in cannabis. I mean, I was just on the phone with someone yesterday, and they were telling me how they have over $2.5 million out to dispensaries for product that they've already sold that is owed to them.
Well, and it is a huge problem in the industry right now. As the price dropped and these businesses start circling the drain, I got involved in purchase and sale of many of them. And for me as an attorney, it's my obligation to make sure that I understand the debt asset situation going in. When people don't bring attorneys in, and you know, this is the Attorneys Full Employment Act here. If you don't get an attorney going in, you're going to need one at some point because your partner's going to fuck you. And if you don't have it all in writing and really clear, then you're going to be in court fighting over stuff you may not win. And as you pointed out, Jason, over the last couple of years, a lot of product has gone down range and been sold, and promises along the way to pay. And people owe. Peter has been robbing Paul to pay, you know, the cultivator, and nobody's getting money. Everybody owes millions of dollars. It's unbelievable how much money's owed. And these debts just don't go away.
You know what I attribute a lot of that to, Dale, is the fact that that retails are hit the hardest. So if you have a standalone retail, you're going to get hit the hardest under a 280E tax structure. And I think that is one of the main reasons that a lot of these retailers don't have the funds to continue paying their invoices is in part due to that.
Well, what I've seen is there's not enough attention put to the details as you go into these, especially dispensary relationships. They're the hardest part of the industry to stay on because the public's coming in there, the taxes are heavy, the regulations are heavy. You can only get products and pass them along. You can't, you know, take it out of a jar and put it into a bag yourself. So you get stuck with having to buy all these products to go out the door. If you don't have a clear plan and funding to be able to get through the low times, you end up taking product, you sell it, and then you can't pay people. And it's a vicious, vicious cycle. And that's where we are right now in the industry.
Very, very true. What are your thoughts on this, Rachelle?
Same old story, same old song and dance. People not paying each other in cannabis. It's an epidemic. It seems like it's more and more the narrative on a big scale, small scale. No one can get their bills paid. And I don't know what it's going to take to even the score, right? Even if we eliminate 280E, people are so deeply in debt and there are so many reputations that have already been destroyed. It's really difficult. I mean, who can you trust in this space? Literally every person I know has been fucked over at least one time by a vendor, whether it was on purpose or just a result of circumstance. You know, back in the day when people were just trapping, it's like it's breakage, right? And the consequences were whatever they were. Now it's like we're a business, and so businesses don't pay their bills for whatever reason. What kind of reputation is that going to result in long term?
Now, Dale, if there was some type of 280E relief put in place, that would not be retroactive to any of these businesses. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're all of a sudden, it's just going to be as of that day, you're not subject to these taxes, right? From a legal perspective?
Well, exactly. You're not, you don't get retroactive application, but it doesn't wipe the debts out.
That's what that's my point. Yeah. So like the debts are going to continue to mount. But once the 280E relief is not going to continue to mount at such a rate as what it was previously mounting.
Well, and one of the problems I have, especially with dispensaries, where there's a lot of income coming in, is if you don't go into your dispensary with a plan with an accountant of how to deal with 280E realistically, and not overburden your business with too much overhead, you get surprised when your accountant goes, hey, you owe X number. I mean, Cody Bass, look at our friend Cody Bass. He's a couple $1 million deep because you don't have the plan to handle your 280E. It will kill you. It really, literally will kill you because the tax people don't play. They show up at your place and just take your money.
They'll do a till tap. I've had them come in and do a till tap before. That's probably one of the most gnarliest things that you can experience.
They don't want your product. They want your cash.
Yeah, they want the money.
So they show up and just take your cash because they get an order, your tax lien. Here we are. We're taking your money. And it's brutal at that point because I can't fix it. I'm not a tax guy. It makes me nauseous. But we have to bring tax attorneys in, and they're expensive. And you just can't dig out of the hole at that point because you can't even afford to pay your vendors, let alone attorneys that want $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 retainers to go in and represent you.
Mm-hmm.
Planning. The message is planning. Know who you're getting in bed with when you go to business. Know where your money's coming from. Know when you expect to hit positive cash flow. Stick to those metrics and make sure that your board and your business understands where you're trying to reach your profit point. And get rid of dead weight, man. You don't need 10 bud tenders anymore. Those days are gone. You need to be lean and mean right now, and make sure you're making money and build from there.
Exactly. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back. The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated. You hit that like button for us. I know YouTube appreciates it, and we will appreciate it also. Also, make sure you can check out all the stories over on our website, www.highat9news.com. Also, you can check out the merchandise, all types of other different fun stuff as well.
How's it going, guys? Saman Razani coming to you from Green Street here with Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast available on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify? Tune in now and check it out.
And we're back. Are you guys ready for this? Man, oh man, oh man. A Chinese immigrant worker sue over forced labor at illegal marijuana operation on Navajo land. Chinese immigrant workers allege they were lured to northern New Mexico under false pretenses and forced to work 14 hours a day trimming marijuana on the Navajo Nation, where cultivating the plant is illegal, according to a lawsuit filed Wednesday in the state court. Job advertisements for the operation in Shiprock promised $200 per day, housing, and food in exchange for gardening and flower cutting. But when the workers arrived in New Mexico, the complaint says their phones and car keys were taken away, they were barred from leaving, and in some instances, family members were separated. Man, this sounds like Humboldt to me back in the day. But nonetheless, in a statement Wednesday, lawyers for the 15 workers said their clients were treated like animals and commended their bravery for coming forward. In a quote, ending forced labor requires that the proprietors of forced labor and those who seek to benefit from such schemes face serious consequences, attorney Aaron Halegua said. He also says, we hope that this lawsuit will demonstrate that such abusive practices do not pay. The lawsuit names as defendants Navajo businessmen Dene Benali and Irving Lin, a Taiwanese entrepreneur based in Los Angeles. It also names associates of Benali and Lin, as well as businesses linked to the farming operation, which authorities say ballooned to nearly 24 farms and more than 1,100 greenhouses spread across 400 acres, basically 162 hectares. At least 19 rooms at a motel in a nearby Farmington supported the operation, and the complaint alleges that workers were treated like prisoners at the motel, which was under watch by armed security guards and like machines while tolling in the fields, according to the complaint. Farmington police busted the operation on October of 2020, and they were called to the motel to investigate a strong odor of marijuana they found. 2,000 pounds of marijuana worth $3 million to $10 million. What is up with this math? According to the lawsuit, workers who were there at the time were arrested, but drug charges later were dropped. In late 2020, federal and state tribal authorities also raided the Shipwreck area farms, destroying 250,000 plants, and the Navajo Nation Department of Justice sued Benally, leading to a court order halting the operation that the lawsuit says Benally and his associates ignored. Benally didn't respond to phone and emailed requests for comment, and David Jordan, who represented Benally in the Navajo case, declined to comment on the lawsuit, although he denied that Benally ignored the tribal judge's order to halt farming. Lynn couldn't immediately be reached for comment on Wednesday, and it wasn't clear from the court records whether he has an attorney who could comment on his behalf, and a lawyer in New Mexico who represented Lynn previously wasn't available Wednesday evening either. But in March of 2021, affidavit detailed in the lawsuit, Lynn stated there was, in quotes, no evidence of human trafficking and no human rights violated by the farming operation. The lawsuit filed in Santa Fe seeks a jury trial and unspecified damages. Benally, a former Navajo Nation presidential candidate who campaigned on growing hemp to boost the economy, is accused in the lawsuit of turning a blind eye to federal and tribal laws that make it illegal to grow marijuana on the reservation. The complaint says he instructed his associates and the workers to refer to the marijuana as hemp to avoid law enforcement scrutiny. The lawsuit claims that Benally and Lynn intentionally targeted Chinese immigrants in California who were out of work in 2020 at the height of the coronavirus pandemic, and Philip Francisco, then chief of police for the Navajo Nation, previously estimated that there were 1,100 people working the operation, mostly foreign workers brought to New Mexico from Los Angeles, and other law enforcement officials estimated the number of workers surpasses 2,000. Navajo residents describe seeing the workers sleeping in the fields and in ditches, shivering through the night, the lawsuit states, and one worker said he slept on the floors of greenhouses and was never paid any of the roughly $12,000 in wages he was promised. Workers did not get adequate rest or enough food and water throughout the day, according to the lawsuit, and the workers were monitored by cameras and security guards, some of whom were armed, the complaint states. When they sought to leave or just rest, the lawsuit alleges they were forced to continue working. Well, this sounds like some pretty horrific conditions, but I wonder what you have to say about this, Dale, and this lawsuit. You're a little expert law master over there, and also anxious to hear what you have to say about this, Rachelle, from a human rights perspective. And this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all think?
Well, my first thought is it's confusing of who has jurisdiction here. Federal government, through the Controlled Substances Act, has split jurisdiction with states. But the Indian nations, I mean, I'm not an expert in Indian law, and it looks like there was jurisdiction in the Indian nation because there was an Indian nation court who ordered them to stop. Okay? So that's a bit confusing. And if they're in Santa Fe, is it in federal court or state court?
The lawsuit says that it was filed in Santa Fe, but to my thought is that they would only have jurisdiction on this under the tribal law, since these actions are alleged to be happening under the tribe's awareness, so per se.
Well, and that's the big issue here, is who really has the right to step in and do anything about this. And I don't know if the reservation has ceded jurisdiction to the federal government over any of this stuff. And that would be an interesting question. But if you drop down to the next level, I mean, it looks like they're trying to pump up the hemp there. And so they're probably not looking as closely at a cannabis plant, whether it's marijuana or hemp. And those have been issues we faced in California, where people are sneaking hot hemp in, or, actually just growing marijuana in a crop, and who's out there looking for it. That's one of the issues. And if you have a court order telling you to stop doing something and you violate the order, I go to court. And when you walk into court and the judge said, you violated my order, what's your response? And if you ain't got a good one, you may be put in handcuffs and taken to jail.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is they're planning to do with somebody who blatantly violates a court order.
Very true. What are your thoughts on this, Rachelle?
Once again, we're talking about a narrative that's so prevalent in cannabis, right? Human rights abuses on these farms. And it sounds like the case might have difficulty making it through based on what the evidence has found. But it wouldn't surprise me in the least if the allegations were true, just because these types of things are so pervasive in our space and they're not talked about nearly enough. Murder Mountain was one thing, and that was a very sensationalized story, but there was some truth to it. I think the fact that workers in cannabis are not being protected, and we're not just talking about human trafficking, we're not just talking about sexual abuse, we're not just talking about abhorrent conditions, we're also talking about general safety, right? Wearing masks, being protected from all the different occupational hazards. In other industries, OSHA is so feared and respected, and I'm just curious if cannabis is even close to catching up to that, because the whole workman's comp and the federal Schedule I status, I feel like it kind of makes the situation a little dicier. What do you have to say about that, Dale?
Well, what we've experienced here in California is that the organized groups out here are Hmong. And they immigrated here after the Vietnam War, and there's a large group of them, and they contract with black market cultivation operations to go out and do their trimming. And I know some of the people who do this. They're, I actually like them, and I don't think that they abuse folks, okay? But the ones I know have a conscience. There are people out there who don't. And the horror stories of women having to trim with their shirts off for some, craven, misogynist prick, I think those are less of a problem than what we face out here and have faced in California agriculture. They just work these workers to death. They only give them what they're required to give them. And the reason we have work comp and labor laws is because people have been abused and died in the past on these operations. And, I have one client who does trimming as a business. She had to get an agricultural contractor's license and then follow those rules because she's trying to be conscientious. But you find all over the place people who don't give two shits about the rules. They're there to make money. And the idea that someone would be forced to sleep on a floor and not paid $12,000 causes me to want to dig a little bit deeper. Yeah. That seems like abuse of your workers.
Well, not only that, Dale, but like how is this worker going to prove that they weren't paid that $12,000 that they are alleging that they're owed?
Well, to a certain extent, the state labor laws put the burden onto the employer, and that's where it should be. Okay, if somebody says, "Hey, I was promised this amount of money," and the employer can't prove that they actually paid that amount of money, they're looking at problems. And if somebody ends up being injured, you're going to have OSHA and you're going to have work comp people coming in there sticking a microscope up your ass. But, these organizations really don't care. What surprises me is this is such a big operation on the Indian nation. It's already come under scrutiny, and they're still doing it. What we see out in California is they come in and pop an operation. They pull up their tent and go away, and, half a mile away, they're doing the same damn thing. So you got to keep playing whack-a-mole chasing them. And this looks like a well-organized group right there in plain sight. How in the hell did this go on for so long?
Man, so you're saying that the onerous is on the employer to prove that they did pay the employee, correct, Dale?
Yeah.
So question.
And you don't get to pay them in cash. You've got to have receipts. You've got to show that this person was paid and that you have a workers' compensation policy for them and you follow the labor laws. And in California, if somebody makes a complaint and they show up, you better as the employer be able to prove you were following the rules.
But this would fall under tribal law, though, Dale, as far as on the employment side. And so how is it that that if there is none of these employment protections that there are in the state for the tribes, how are they supposed to prove that?
Well, this is where I don't know where they have jurisdictional cutoffs, because it's possible that you have a shared jurisdiction with the sheriffs and law enforcement around you and with the federal government, because there are federal and state labor laws. You just can't treat people like this. And that's possible, but it's also possible that they retain jurisdiction. And even if they have some, place where an office says this is, Indian OSHA or whatever the fuck they might want to call it, is there anybody there? Is anybody going to do anything?
Did you say Indian OSHA?
Well, Cal OSHA is what we call it. It could be, I don't know, whatever the tribe's name is, their Occupational Safety and Health Administration for that tribe, whatever they call it. Does it exist? I don't know.
Very true. I don't know the answers to this question either, but I know that this is a super interesting story, and I definitely feel for all the laborers that are put through those horrendous conditions. But we're gonna keep this train rolling. We're gonna roll right into Miss Rachelle Gordon. She is the editor. Right? Am I right about this? She's a journalist, psychedelics journalist, and the editor, I was right, of greenstate.com. She's been featured in High Times, Cannabis Now, Beard Brothers, and a whole bunch of other publications, and loves Viewmasters and heady Lego sets. That's right. It is other than the Miss Rachelle Gordon.
I do love Viewmaster, actually, for those who don't know. I have quite the collection of Viewmaster reels. They're quite fun, especially when you're on psychedelics. So, what I want to talk about today is the Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference. It's happening as we speak in Chicago. I drove down there from Minnesota. I was there yesterday, one day only, came back last night. And it was a very interesting time to be at a cannabis investor conference, given the current landscape with the conversations around rescheduling or descheduling. While the conference was happening, the Schafer Banking Act was being debated and pushed through committee. So it was a very interesting time. I haven't had a chance to put up my own article yet, but Deborah Borchardt of Green Market Report, fantastic cannabis business journalist, she was able to file something yesterday in the midst of everything, and I just wanted to speak a little bit because I share a lot of the sentiments. So her headline was Cautious Optimism at Benzinga Conference, something that we touched on earlier with Gretchen's piece. Very, very cautious. That's the key word. Speakers focused on new markets rather than challenged ones. I'm just going to read directly from Deborah's report. There was a noticeable air of cautious optimism at the Benzinga Cannabis Conference in Chicago this week, driven in large part by the recent events in Washington, D.C. While there haven't been any concrete changes in federal legislation, there appear to be productive steps forward. It's a marked change from the mood in Miami earlier this year, and this is me speaking now, where the previous Benzinga conference was held. And the air there was somewhat depressed, with lots of talk about just trying to survive. 6 months later, even conversations around depressed assets had a whiff of opportunity. Back to Deborah. Instead of dwelling on the fact that there are companies in receivership, the conversation for one panel on seller assets talked about the buying opportunities. The panelists focused on where investors could jump in. There wasn't any talk of abandoning cannabis because the industry had flamed out. There was, however, a larger emphasis on companies getting back to basics. Advice about zeroing in on profitability, cash flow, and strengthening the balance sheets abounded, as many speakers pointed out that the cannabis industry was experiencing a normal business cycle. Indeed, there was a lot of talk about the recent challenges in cannabis being a part of a typical evolution of an emerging market. Quote, there's nothing like a crisis to make a company lean and mean. That's from Seymour Asset Management founder Tim Seymour, per Deborah's report. Instead of talking about depressed equity valuations, speakers pointed out that the industry is on the cusp of attracting significant institutional capital. Rob Searchris, president of Polaris Equity Group, noted that his investment work has cleared a path for institutional money, and Canaccord Genuity analyst Matt Bottomley also stated that he thinks there will be significant buying in the future. Schafer was everywhere. This was the big headline of yesterday, right? You'd be hard-pressed to sit in any panel and not hear some discussion of the Senate committee vote on the Safer Banking Act, including exuberance about the historic nature of the movement. This was a first vote in the Senate, and it was a historic win, TrueLeaf CEO Kim Rivers said. She added that the cannabis industry tends to get bogged down with the hurdles and doesn't celebrate the victories. It's a marathon, and this is the time to take a water break and have a high five. Okay. In addition, she acknowledged that the next heavy lift will be getting the House and the Senate aligned on the legislation. However, she stressed it's a process that moves in incremental steps, as we discussed earlier. If everything goes according to plan with past movements in the legislature, the industry could see real movement by the summer of 2024, she had said. Quote, "We've been working on this for years," former Colorado U.S. Representative Ed Perlmutter added. "I feel like we were the starting pitchers, but now we need closers. It's good news today. It's been bottled up in the Senate for the last 5 years." And that sentiment was echoed by former Colorado Senator Cory Gardner. Laws typically take 10 years for legislation to start and then get enacted. The Senate doesn't really talk about issues like cannabis because they mostly make fun of it. We joke that the Senate has hip replacement Thursdays. Still, this is light speed for the Senate. And as far as new markets go, attendees and speakers also focused more on new markets rather than the challenged ones. Sure, California was discussed and many shook their heads at the mess in the New York market, but that didn't stop excitement around Pennsylvania and Ohio. Overall, the talk about the East Coast was positive, with New Jersey, Maryland, and Massachusetts leading the way on solid marketplaces. So great reporting from Deborah, and I absolutely agree with everything that she said in her article. The patience was a very key word. Caution was a key word. But from my experience, the vibe at the cannabis business conferences over the last couple of years have been very subdued. And yesterday, I have to say that the energy was more upbeat. Obviously, nothing is a silver bullet at this point. There have been no grand slams, but the fact that these conversations are even happening to slightly move the needle forward is hopeful. And I do think that people are looking forward to 2024 with a slight bit more optimism than we've been seeing in the last couple of years. So the overall Benzinga conference was great. It was great to see everybody. I appreciate the team for having me down, also for nominating me for Best Cannabis Business Reporter. Appreciate the Benzinga team. And yeah, woo, woo. Great time. Really great crowd. I was pleasantly surprised to see how packed the speaker halls were. Does it mean that the industry is on an uphill swing? I certainly hope so. But Dale, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. Jason, of course, interested in hearing what you have to say about the current state of cannabis investments.
Well, cautious is something that they should tattoo on their forehead. I've been in this for over 20 years, and the hope that we saw in California and even in Colorado when they passed their initiatives to get this stuff started has just fallen off the cliff because people just were not thinking about a startup business. How do you dial in your profit line? How do you accurately, anticipate when you're going to meet profitability? How do you watch your bottom line? They didn't do that. They just went out and spent money like drunken fucking sailors, okay? And then they went off the cliff and it was circling the drain. Any state or jurisdiction that is thinking about doing this needs to take a hard look at California, Colorado, Florida, New York, and try to learn from their mistakes. And you should be cautious. Because when I sit down with people that actually have the forethought to look into doing a business, I'm blunt. This is risky. This is real goddamn risky. And if you don't understand that going in, you're going to fail, okay? Even knowing it's risky, you got to have your money packed away. The people that provide you money understand there's patience. This is not just going to be profitable tomorrow. And you can't have knuckleheads running these businesses, okay? And the people trying to tell you, oh, it's great wins, they tend to be the knuckleheads who are going to take your business and drive it off a cliff. Find people that have run businesses before, not just somebody who can tell good weed from boof, somebody who's run a business, who knows how to manage money, how to manage personnel, how to work within a highly taxed and highly regulated industry, and still be cautious.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. I just can imagine that everyone over there just celebrating the fact of this safe banking movement or safer banking movement. And I can just picture everybody cheersing, having high fives, patting each other on the butt cheeks, and just like hoorah, basically. But I still want to know, where's the money, Lebowski? Where's the money? Let's start seeing some money pouring into cannabis because these businesses desperately need some financial relief.
Yeah, and I don't think that it was, as Kim Rivers said, as joyous as she would have liked to see. I think people are realistic, right? It wasn't the same sort of energy that we saw back in 2016, 2017, prior to the bubble bursting, where it was just blowout parties, celebrations, we're all rolling in cash like we're Scrooge McDuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
People understand that there's a lot more at stake, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to attract institutional capital based on the history of what's been going on here. So while it is very, very cautious, I think people were realistic. But at the same time, it was slightly more positive and upbeat energy than I've seen in the last couple of years of these things.
Well,
The good news is that there's a market for weed out there.
mm-hmm.
Clear, abundant market for it. And if the regulators are the ones that are dragging their feet here, then take that as part of your business plan. Don't expect, I don't expect fair banking or the smart banking. I don't expect 280E in the near future. I'd like it to happen, but given politics, you can't bet on that. So, hope and is not a plan. Okay? You take what's in front of you now. Institutional money is just not available. Banks require a lot more than the fucking idiots that have been running these businesses. They are not going to let their money be squandered like this. So if you're going to get private money, you got to know what their expectations are. And these require honest, put your cards on the table discussions. Where's the money coming from? When do you want it paid back? What happens if we can't? And not that I think attorneys are going to fix this, but I appreciate having a chance to sit down before you go out and get your business license and fail to try to put together a plan that's realistic. And how do you deal with the changing market and the hope that you're going to get federal relief? What do you do in the meantime?
Mm-hmm. Very, very true. And I still wonder if these guys are out there just spending money like that when safe banking passes. What are they going to be spending money like then? Hopefully, they're going to make it rain. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to remain hopelessly optimistic on this. But I have one last story for today on this with you guys. It's a quick close one. Montana marijuana lab closes compliance software glitch. Okay. Owners of a marijuana testing lab in Montana say they were shut down out of concern that the state regulators are more focused on tax revenue and less on a compliance software glitch that could lead to untested cannabis. Ron and Christine Brost of Stillwater Labs in Olney said large batches of cannabis aren't being tested because of an issue with Metric, the state's cannabis compliance tracking software, according to the Daily Montanan. Kristen Barbour, division administrator of the state's Cannabis Control Division, told the newspaper that the agency is focused on public health and that taxes are administrated by the Business and Income Taxes Division. As for metric and lab testing standards, Barbour acknowledged that the software could allow for larger batches to be approved without being properly tested. Barbour said the division is hiring more staff to investigate issues with retail operators and working with Metric to solve the glitch. And in a quote, harvest test lots identified in the report were tested. Lot quantities exceeded the 5-pound lot requirement, and greater than 5 pounds of flower sourced from these test lots was sold at licensed dispensaries. Are being considered for further investigation and possible enforcement action, Barbour told the Daily Montanan. Montana launched adult-use cannabis back in 2022, and retailers in the state sold more than $303 million in medical and adult-use cannabis products to consumers. Man, oh man, oh man. That 5 pounds is a pretty small batch size, I feel like. Yeah. I think Nevada has that 5 pound limit too, if I remember correctly, but don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that they do. But
Well, we do 50 pounds here in
yeah,
California.
yeah, 50 pounds.
But, and they put in the regulations that, it was it 150,000, items of a product batch. You
Yep.
have to go pick a certain number. They were pretty specific, and you can't move it until metric is shown a COA or
Yep.
a test.
Yeah, it's got to
results
stay
from
in the
that.
quarantine area in the distro.
Yeah, so I wonder, they not see the how other states are doing this and how it might be successful. It's again an example of not learning from the mistakes or the complications from other jurisdictions. And just think, oh, we'll just go do this. No, you won't. I mean, there's people who have done this and made mistakes about it. Learn from those mistakes or figure out what works well. And metric is a mess. I don't know about you, Jason, but metric is just
No,
an
metric is a clusterfuck for sure.
clusterfuck
Yeah,
out here in California. It's terrible.
it's metric everywhere is a clusterfuck just in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a typical state computer system that is outdated before you even get started. You can't get them to keep up with how the market's actually going. And it's the arcane rules they apply. Nobody seems to know what the hell they're doing. And one little glitch can cost somebody their entire business, and they didn't do anything wrong. And feedback's just not all that good.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I agree. Any thoughts on this, Rachelle?
Yeah, it seems like the whole the theme of this episode has been the common threads of cannabis, right?
Yes.
Metrics messed up, it never ends, and I don't understand why so many states continue to adopt this system, probably because they don't feel like they have any other choice, right? They're like,
Well, they're
everyone
like,
else is using it,
all these
we'll
other
use it too."
states say you're good. Sure, come on in. Yeah.
Classic, like states
Yeah.
not vetting their vendors.
well,
I
not-
mean, we all know what happened here in Minnesota with the our OCM last week. So that's all I have to say. The governor here in Minnesota and the Office of Cannabis Management better get this one right when they decide the track and trace system. But I
Oh,
am not
man.
holding out high hopes. I'm gonna go ahead and assume it's gonna continue with metric.
Well, and in all fairness, I mean, you have to be honest. It's not like there's a lot of competitors out there vibing for these contracts. You have BioTrack, and I think there's one other. But like their percentage of the market share is so small. I can't even remember their name. And so yeah, you have to always quantify that in regards to the people that are providing the services as what is their competition offering, and right now they're not having a lot of competition.
Precisely.
Yes.
It's a computer, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Silicon Valley could fix this problem tomorrow. They didn't have all the regulatory constraints the government puts on them.
That is very, very true, Dale. And on that one, my friend, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you all for getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank you to our audience supporters for always tuning in daily and watching the antics that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to Dale and Rachelle for coming on today, spending your time with us today. And thank you to our audience. We know you could have been anywhere else. We appreciate you spending your morning or afternoon with us, wherever you are in the world. And as for that, we also too want to make a quick note that Rico was discharged out of the hospital, so we hope to see him coming back soon. Hopefully, probably sometime next week, realistically. So he is doing well. Make sure you send him some love on social media somewhere. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's America's #1 daily cannabis news show.